Do you struggle to photograph birds in trees? Do you find the camera keeps focusing on branches around or in front of the bird? I'm professional bird photographer Paul Miguel, and in this video I'm going to show you the exact technique that I use to make sure I keep that bird in sharp focus. I was photographing a wood pigeon here at this location earlier in the spring, and it was just so difficult. There were so many branches in the way, and I had to use the exact technique that I'm going to share with you. Now, the situation was lovely, the lighting was beautiful, beautiful buds in the trees. It was very close as well. I had a total of 700mm focal length, so lots of magnification, but just getting a clear view was really difficult. And I did see some interesting behaviour with that wood pigeon. First I thought it was maybe grabbing nesting material, but it looked like it was just picking off food, little insects perhaps off the buds. There was lots of branches between us, and not just little twigs, but really quite thick branches. I think it was a hawthorn tree. So the focus on the camera was just all over the place. It would lock onto various branches and not the bird. In this kind of situation, a subject tracking focus, one that follows the bird or perhaps follow the eye, probably isn't going to work very well. It's often much better to switch to a spot focus, which is more accurate, and hopefully you can pick out the bird through the branches. Sometimes even that, whoa, black cap. Sometimes even that isn't reliable enough, and you might have to switch to fully manual focus and just use the manual focus ring instead. However, I might still want the option of autofocus as well. If a bird decided to jump on a clearer branch, then I'd much rather use autofocus than be stuck on manual. So I use what I call a hybrid focus technique, whereby I lock the autofocus temporarily, grab the manual focus ring and focus manually. Now there's different ways of doing this, but basically what you're doing is disengaging the autofocus so you can take full control and focus manually. Now this works really well if you're using back button focus, where you've got the back button set to AF on. If you're using back button focus, you can simply take your thumb off the back button to disengage, or we could say lock the focus, and then just use the manual focus ring on its own to get sharp focus. And if the bird goes into a better situation, you can press your thumb back in to engage the focus. If, however, you're like me and you prefer to focus with a shutter button, then you can do it this way. I basically do the opposite. I have the back button set up as a focus lock on AF off. I press the back button to lock the focus, to disengage it, and then I can focus manually. Yes, I have to keep my thumb on the back button the whole time whilst I'm focusing. Then if I want to go back to autofocus, I just take my thumb off and half press the shutter. So I used that technique with the wood pigeon, but there was many failed attempts. And I think for this kind of photography, you just have to accept that. Now, you might find a better way of doing this kind of hybrid technique, but I think it's good to have some kind of system that you can fall back on in this situation. Now, question for today is, do you ever use manual focus for your bird photography? And if you do you also have a way of combining it with autofocus? When it comes to getting accurate manual focus, you could perhaps use the screen, maybe with manual focus peaking if your camera has that facility. That is whereby it adds a colour overlay which tells you when that part of the image is in sharp focus. Or if you trust your eyes, then simply use the viewfinder and just use the manual focus ring until it looks in sharpest focus. And a little tip, if you are using the viewfinder to focus manually, make sure the diopter on the viewfinder is set up specifically for your eye. I would also suggest taking lots of pictures, particularly if the bird is moving around quite a lot. Now, one thing I would be careful of is trying to use autofocus and manual focus at the same time. So what I mean by that is, if you've still got autofocus engaged and you're using the manual focus ring, then you're trying to get the camera to do two things at once, potentially causing a conflict. I don't think that's good for the camera. So if you want to use manual focus in this way, then make sure you're at least temporarily switching off autofocus. However you do it, I think the beauty of this technique is it gives you a quick option to focus manually, but also allows you to quickly go back to autofocus if you want to. I have helped literally hundreds of people over the years to understand their cameras better and improve their bird photography. If you'd like some one-to-one in-person tuition with me, then just click the link in the description, or you can email me directly as well. This technique also allowed me to get some really nice pictures of a male bullfinch. Now, I'd noticed there was a pair here kind of flitting around in the trees, very difficult to get good views of them, and then the male kind of went off on his own, and I could see the male bullfinch moving through the trees, but again, very difficult to get a clear view. This situation was a little bit different because the bird was much smaller and also further away, and at times it was not only difficult to see the bird, but difficult to see in which direction it was going. This technique, ooh, black caps again. However, I would say there weren't as many dense and thick branches in the way. I persisted with this technique, and not only did I get some sharp photos, but I also got some lovely behaviour as well. And I really like that effect of the blurring a lot of the foreground branches in front and around the bird. I think that's a lovely effect, and it certainly looks very natural and uncontrived. Again, I had lots of images where the bird just wasn't clear, it wasn't in sharp enough focus, but with this kind of photography you just really need to be persistent and be patient as well. Just keep trying, keep shooting and do your best. And I actually found the images turned out much better than I ever expected, and also because it is such a difficult situation, you do get quite a sense of achievement as well. Another situation where you might want to try this technique is photographing birds in reeds, and particularly birds like warblers. Again, it can be very difficult for the autofocus to lock onto the bird here with all the distractions. So in this situation, it might be worth giving it a go. Photographing birds through branches can be really tough, but with a little bit of know-how, you can definitely get sharp photos. Just take some persistence and perhaps a little bit of thinking outside the box. And if you'd like some tuition with me to improve your bird photography, click the link in the description or send me an email. I'll see you in the next one.